In this module, we're going to continue the conversation around female hormones and our cycle, but specifically, we're going to be talking about different things that can really impact our female hormones, and we're going to be breaking down the different phases of our cycle so you can start to become aware of what you may potentially experience during the different phases. So this may be helpful as you start to track your cycle. But to get started, let's talk about the 4 main categories that can really impact our hormonal health, and that includes stress, sleep, inflammation, and xenoestrogen. So I'm going to be breaking down each category. And so first, let's talk about stress, since I find this impacts so many of the women I work with, and this can really impact our hormonal health. And so with stress, it can impact our hypothalamus, and this can reduce FSH and LH hormones, which can impact our ovulation. And so if you remember in the previous module, we want to make sure we're ovulating, so our body's producing its own natural progesterone. Stress can also impact our adrenals. So if you remember again in the previous module, when we're under a lot of stress, it can shift that pathway to produce more cortisol, which can lead to a progesterone and estrogen imbalance, which could lead to those estrogen dominance-like symptoms. Stress can also impact our HPA axis, leading to a dysfunction. And this can really impact the communication between our brain and our reproductive organs, which is not what we want. And so the thing with stress is that I've noticed is sometimes individuals, specifically women, type A women, is that sometimes we become almost desensitized to how stressed out we actually are. So for example, let's just say you start a new job and you have more demands on your plate. So you're at level 10 stress. So if someone asks you, hey, how stressed out are you? You might say, I'm a level 10. There's a lot going on. But let's just say a few months go by and you've almost become so used to having so much on your plate that you become desensitized to that stress that if someone asked you, hey, how stressed out are you? You might say, oh, I'm not too bad. It's maybe a 5 or 6. But your body may still be experiencing that level 10 stress. So this is important to reflect on, because if you're someone who's struggling with hormonal imbalances and you're doing all these different things and you're not noticing improvement, really reflect on how stressed out you actually are. Are you someone who maybe has become desensitized to that stress, but is your body still stressed out? So that's something to really reflect on in your own personal life. But there's things that we could do to help with stress. And the 2 main ones is rest and laughter. Those are 2 great things that we can help just calm our nervous system down. But there's other things like guided meditations, breath work, journaling, going for a walk, being out in nature, talking to a friend, talking to a therapist. So adding in a stress-reducing activity every single day could be beneficial, because you can start to train your nervous system to be able to handle that stress better. So I recommend adding in something that you enjoy and you can be consistent with, that you can add in every single day. And it doesn't have to be for a long period of time. It could just be for 5 minutes. So adding in maybe mindfulness practice for 5 minutes, a journaling practice for 5 minutes, being outside for 5 minutes, whatever it may be, I recommend you add in a stress-reducing activity. But sometimes when we're under a lot of stress, adding in a supplement can also be beneficial. So some that you can consider are magnesium glycinate. So this has a calming effect on our nervous system. It can help regulate the HPA axis, improve thyroid and insulin function. Another one is zinc. So this is a great one. But the thing with zinc is that you want to be mindful of the dose and how long you're taking it. So if you're taking a large dose for a few months, you could possibly cause a copper deficiency. And so if you're taking a large dose, maybe just because you're feeling sick or people around you are getting sick and you're taking it for a week or 2, that's totally fine. But if you're taking it for a month or longer, you really want to be mindful of the type of supplement that you're taking. So if you are taking zinc, make sure it also has a copper ratio in there, so that way you don't possibly cause a copper deficiency. But another great one are B vitamins, so B complex. This is great because when we're under a lot of stress, our body will flush these B vitamins, and since they're water soluble, our body doesn't store it as it would with fat soluble vitamins. So we want to make sure we're getting enough B vitamins every single day, either from food or from a supplement. And if you're on hormonal birth control, it could really deplete your B vitamins and other vitamins and minerals, but B vitamins specifically. So adding in a B complex could be a great way to just make sure your body's getting enough of those B vitamins that it needs, because there's so many different vitamins and they all work together. Another one is rhodiola. So this one has a calming effect on the HPA axis. And with any of the supplements I'm recommending, if you have specific questions or want specific brands recommendations or doses for you specifically, definitely let me know. We can create more of a personalized approach for you. And so now let's talk about sleep. So sleep is literally the best thing we can do when it comes to our hormonal health. So when we're sleeping, our body does so much. It repairs, it detoxifies, it eliminates, it does so much for our body, and can also help have more of that stabilizing, calming effect on our HPA axis, which is so beneficial when it comes to our hormonal health. So sleep is very key when it comes to healthy hormones. So really reflect and evaluate your own sleep. Do you feel you're getting enough sleep? Is it high quality sleep? And so some things that you can add in if you feel like maybe you struggle to fall asleep or to stay asleep, or maybe you just feel tired even though you sleep or you feel you sleep enough, it could be improving the quality of sleep by adding in a evening routine, or just getting to the root cause, because everyone's so different, their situations are different. So getting to the root cause of why you may be struggling to fall asleep. But adding in an evening routine could be very beneficial. And the reason being is that when we add in an evening routine and we do it consistently, it can start to train our body to know when we're about to fall asleep, so it can produce its own natural melatonin. So if you drink tea or read a book or brush your teeth around the same time every single night, it'll start to stimulate your mind, say, okay, she's about to get ready for bed, let's release melatonin and calm our nervous system down. Also, with an evening routine, it can add in a layer to help your body actually calm down before you go to bed, especially if you're someone who struggles to either fall asleep right away or to stay asleep. It could mean that your nervous system is just too wired before you went to bed. And by adding an evening routine, it could be a great way to just calm your nervous system down, to prep your body for that high quality sleep, which is what we want. But you can also add in supplements like magnesium glycinate, has that calming effect. Melatonin, and one thing with melatonin that I recommend is that you only do it for the short term. So if you're traveling, or if maybe you're just going through a temporary season of stress. And you also don't need a large dose. You can look for one that has about 0.3 to 0.5 milligrams. And if you do a larger dose, it has more of an antioxidant effect. And if you do find yourself needing melatonin every single night, I recommend you reflect on, why do you feel the need for melatonin? Instead, let's get to the root cause of what's causing you to not get that high quality sleep. But other supplements to consider are 5-HTP or GABA. This helps reduce the time it takes to fall asleep and improve the quality. Or herbals, so valerian root, passion flower, hops. And I've linked a few teas that you can look into, but adding in a tea is a great way to not only help calm the system down, but teas have antioxidants and phytochemicals and other things that can help with other health benefits besides just helping you with sleep. And so those are great supplements to add in. And now let's talk about inflammation. So with inflammation, these inflammatory cytokines can inhibit the communication between our brain and our reproductive organs, and this can really impact our ovulation, block communication for progesterone and thyroid hormone, or it can hyperstimulate receptors for estrogen, so it can lead to that imbalance. And so the thing with inflammation is that sometimes, specifically in the beginning phases, you don't really know your body's inflamed because you don't really have symptoms right away. But as it progresses, you might notice certain signs or symptoms. And so some of those signs and symptoms could include joint stiffness or pain, constant headaches, migraines, skin issues, chronic GI issues, autoimmune conditions, brain fog, or unexplained fatigue. Those could all be signs of potential inflammation in the body. And so things that can help reduce inflammation is, one, avoid the source of inflammation, and that could be stress, environmental toxins. So if you're driving in traffic and your window's down and you're inhaling all those fumes, that can lead to inflammation in the body. Smoking, lack of exercise, emotional stress. So if you're going through a temporary, let's just say maybe you broke up with your partner, you have a family loss, you lost your job, any situation that causes a temporary emotional stress, that can actually lead to inflammation in the body. Also, unhealthy gut microbiome. So our gut health is so important when it comes to our overall health, but it can actually influence an inflammatory or anti-inflammatory state. So we want to make sure we have a healthy gut microbiome. But you can also add in supplements. So great ones to add in are magnesium again, vitamin C, resveratrol, or omega-3s. So really any supplement that can help provide that antioxidant effect to help counteract any inflammation, or help our liver with detoxification of different toxins or medications or chemicals could be beneficial. And so now let's talk about xenoestrogens. So xenoestrogens are chemicals that can mimic the effect of estrogen in our body or promote the production in our body. And so more and more research is showing that these xenoestrogens can have an endocrine disrupting effect. And so that is something that can really impact our hormonal health. And with the xenoestrogens, sometimes it's more of that accumulative effect. So if you're using different products that all have endocrine disrupting chemicals, that accumulative effect is what really impacts our hormonal health. So we want to be mindful of that. So things that can help is, one, switching to cleaner products, meaning more natural products. And I've linked a few brands below that you can check out. And feel free to make that transition slowly. You don't have to just go to your cabinet and just toss everything. We don't want to be wasteful, and that can be overwhelming. Instead, what I recommend is use up what you have, and then as you run out of your lotion or shampoo, see if you can make a transition to something that has more natural ingredients in there. Also, I recommend avoid reheating any food in plastic. So if you use plastic Tupperware, I recommend switching to glass or stainless steel. Definitely glass if you're going to be warming that up in the microwave. And the reason being is that every time you warm up that plastic, it can slowly start to degrade the plastic, and that can leach into our food. So we want to be cautious of that. Also, switching from plastic water bottles to glass or stainless steel can be helpful, especially because sometimes brands will say it's BPA free, but there's different types of BPA. So you want to be able to trust the brands that you're buying from. Another thing is buying organic whenever possible. And I know this could be a little controversial, but there is a difference between organic pesticides and conventional pesticides. And you don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to buy everything organic. You can be very selective to buy organic only on the high pesticide rich crops. Or if you just don't want to buy organic, what you could do is actually soak your produce in a solution of baking soda with some water or vinegar and some water. And you basically just fill up either your sink or a container, and you just add those mixtures in and just soak your produce for 5-10 minutes. And then you rinse the water, and then you're good to go. And so overall, we want to be mindful of our overall, estrogen exposure. And so there are apps out there that you can download to help you find more natural products. So 3 great apps to consider are Think Dirty, Healthy Living, and Detox Me. And what's great about these apps is that you can download them and you can scan different products when you go shopping, and it'll give you a rating of overall what is in that product. And then you can then decide if you want to buy it or find an alternative. Sometimes the downside with these apps is that they don't have everything in their database. So if you scan something and it's not there, I highly recommend you submit it so we can start to grow this database. But these are great apps to download, especially if you want to transition to more natural products. And so those are things that can really impact our hormonal health. But now let's transition to talking about the different phases and things that you may experience when it comes to our hormones. So when our hormones are balanced, we feel great. We have more energy, we have consistent moods, we have a stronger immune system, and overall we have an easier time maintaining our weight. Versus when our hormones are not balanced, we may experience symptoms like PMS symptoms, we may feel moody, we have irregular periods, we may gain weight or have a hard time losing weight, we may feel anxious or depressed, especially leading up to our period. So if you experience any of these symptoms, it may mean that you have a hormonal imbalance going on. But it is important to note that it's normal to have fluctuations throughout the month, so it's normal for our mood or energy to fluctuate. And the reason being is because our hormones are fluctuating throughout the months, which I'll explain more in the next few slides. But this is very uncommon, but we want to mainly focus on extremes. So extreme shifts in our mood or extreme shifts in our energy levels. And so why our mood and our energy levels can shift is because we have different phases. So our hormones will fluctuate throughout the month depending on which phase of your cycle you're in. And so we have 4 specific phases. So we have menstruation phase, follicular phase, ovulation phase, and the luteal phase. And so I'm going to break down the different phases, and I'm going to be using a 28-day cycle, but it's normal to have a range between 21 to 34 days. And if you are someone who has a shorter cycle, so less than 21 days, or a higher or longer cycle that is greater than 34 days, there may be a hormonal imbalance going on. So typically a 28-day cycle is pretty normal, but it's common to have some fluctuation based on the individual. And why this is important is because since I'm going to be using a 28-day cycle, the length of each phase may vary based on your specific cycle length. And so just keep that in mind. And so if we're using a 28-day cycle, a normal menstruation phase will last about 5 days. And so the start of your period is actually the start of your cycle. So day 1 is day 1 of your period, day 1 of your cycle, and that's going to last about 5 days. Then you enter the follicular phase. This is will last about a week. And then you enter ovulation. And technically we only ovulate once a month. So we can only get pregnant once a month. But since sperm can live inside a female body for up to 5 days, the ovulation window is 5 days. And so if you are someone who's doing the fertility awareness method, this is the part of your cycle that you really want to pay attention to. So if you're trying to get pregnant, this is a great time to increase the times that you have sex to increase the chances of getting pregnant. Or if you're trying to prevent pregnancy, this is a great time to take extra precaution or avoid having sex during this ovulation window. And so with ovulation, it lasts about 5 days. And then we enter the luteal phase. And so this is the longest phase out of all 4 phases. So the luteal phase will last about 2 weeks. And this is when your progesterone will peak. And this is to prep your body for pregnancy or prepare your body for your period if you didn't get pregnant during this time. And with the luteal phase, you can kind of cut it into 2 different phases because you may experience different symptoms in the first half versus the second half. But the luteal phase will last about 2 weeks. I also want to share how men and women are different. So we're very different. Men have a 24-hour cycle versus us females, we have a month-long cycle. And so for men, their day-to-day is pretty much the same. So that means their week is the same, their month is the same, their year is the same, versus us females, we have a lot of variation when it comes to our day-to-day. So depending on which phase of your cycle you're in, you may experience specific symptoms. And so our day-to-day can vary. And so for men, what their day looks like is typically like this. So their testosterone and cortisol levels will slowly increase throughout the day, peak, and then slowly decline as it gets closer to nighttime. Versus as females, depending on which phase of your cycle you're in, we're going to have some hormones that are going to increase and some hormones are decreasing. So that's what adds into that fluctuation of mood and energy. And another important thing to note is that a lot of the studies that are done on men and then simply applied to us females. And so if you hear someone sharing a study online, you want to take a step back and just ask yourself, was that study done on men? And how does that actually apply to us women? Because we are so different. And we can actually use our cycle to our advantage. So if you have some flexibility with your schedule, you can actually schedule certain events around the times when you naturally have more energy, specifically around when you're ovulating. So if you have a meeting presentation or you want to ask someone on a date, a great time to do so is when you're ovulating, because you're going to find that you're more social, you want to be around people, you just have more energy, so you'll have an easier time versus if you did that when you're on your period, when your hormones are at the lowest, you might find that you just don't want to be around people, you have low energy. So if you're able to modify your day-to-day, so your month schedule around your cycle, this is a great way to do it. And I'll talk about how we can even more modify it based on our training and the different cycles in the next few slides. But this is a great way to use our cycle to our advantage. And the more you track, the more you'll become in tune with your specific phases. And another great way to look at our cycle is as in different seasons. So we have winter, spring, summer, and fall. And so if we look in the graph here, so when we're on our period, our hormones are at the lowest. So that's more of that winter type energy. And then as we enter the follicular phase, our energy will slowly start to increase. That's more of that springtime energy. And then as we enter ovulation, our hormones will peak. So we want to be social, do things. We have the most energy. So that's more of that summertime energy. And then as we enter the luteal phase, we get more of this get things done type of energy. So that's more of that fall time energy. So if you're tracking your cycle, this is just a fun way to look at it. So as you track, you can start to become in tune with the different phases, with the different seasons. So whatever's common for that season, that's kind of what we may experience during that phase of our cycle. And we can also modify our lifestyle to align with the different phases. So for example, if we're modifying our diet, we can combine the first and second half of our cycle. So for example, in the first phase of our cycle, so the first half, the follicular and ovulation phase, it's common to feel less hungry. So this is a great time to add in intermittent fasting. It's also a great time to focus on nutrient-dense foods. And why this is important is because we want to give our body what it needs to help build our hormones back up. We also want to be able to support estrogen detoxification. Especially if you're someone who has estrogen dominance-like symptoms, we want to make sure we're giving our body what it needs to eliminate any excess estrogen. And so a great main focus for the first half of your cycle is to focus on fiber-rich foods. So we want to add leafy greens in, starchy vegetables, whole grains, and different fruits. And if you wanted to be more specific to the different phases, in the follicular phase, you can focus on fermented foods, broccoli sprouts, vitamin C-rich foods, so different fruits and vegetables, avocado, and ground flaxseed. And then ovulation, we can add in some lentils, oats, asparagus, sunflower seeds, and eggs. And so the overall theme for the first half is really to support our body and eliminate any excess estrogen. And so supporting our liver, supporting our gut health, especially because those are two main areas in our body that estrogen is detoxified. Also, through adding in soluble fibers, we can also eliminate any excess estrogen just through our bowel movements. And so this is a great focus for the first half. So really prioritizing our fiber intake. And then on the second half, so the luteal and menstruation phase, we may notice that our hunger starts to increase and we may start to crave more carbs. And why this happens is because our estrogen and serotonin levels start to dip, and those are natural appetite suppressants. And then our progesterone will peak, and progesterone will naturally increase our hunger. But the cool thing about progesterone is that it also increases our metabolism. So even though we're going to increase our calorie intake a little bit during this phase of our cycle, we can actually burn more calories during this phase. And so the second half, the main focus that we want to focus on is really anti-inflammatory foods. So our estrogen already peaked. We supported estrogen detoxification, and as we enter the second half, so the luteal and menstruation phase, support our body through anti-inflammatory foods. So colorful fruits and vegetables, because the different colors have different antioxidants and phytochemicals that fight inflammation. We also want to use herbs and spices and omega-3 rich foods. And if you want to divide it into different specific phases, in the luteal phase, you want to focus on leafy greens, dark chocolate, specifically 70% or greater, berries, salmon, ginger. And then menstruation phase, you want to focus on pumpkin seeds, turmeric, cinnamon, high quality proteins, and fruit. So in the second half, we really are prioritizing those anti-inflammatory foods. And we can also modify our training to align with the different phases of our cycle. So in the first half of our cycle, this is a great time to hit your running PRs. And why this is helpful is because we actually have a higher pain threshold during this time. So hitting our running PRs in the first half, and then the second half is a great time to hit your lifting PRs. And why this is helpful is because our progesterone levels will peak, so we get that extra burst of strength during the second half. So if you want to hit a 1 rep max, the second half of your cycle is when you want to do that. But if you have an event that you're training for, it's important to understand that consistency is key. So if you're training for a marathon, or if you're training for a lifting competition, or if you just have a fitness goal in general, consistency is key. So we want to be able to work out during the different phases of our cycle. So it's very important for you to become in tune with your body and your cycle so you can start to auto-regulate based off where you're at. Meaning, for example, if you're about to start your period and you feel great, it's totally okay to work out when you're on your period. But if you're about to start your period and you just feel very fatigued, very tired, very weak, it's totally okay to take a rest day and just move your workout to another day, or go for a walk, or just go lighter that day. So the key here is to really focus on auto-regulating based off of your specific month. And that's what's going to help you keep your hormones healthy while still increasing the intensity of your training, while still working towards a very specific fitness goal. But when it comes to hormonal health and our training, the key aspect here is recovery. So we want to focus on recovery, meaning we want to make sure we're fueling our body properly. So we're eating enough calories, we're eating enough protein, enough healthy fats and carbs. We're having antioxidant-rich foods to help support any inflammation that we may be experiencing. We also want to drink enough water and electrolytes, because sometimes when we drink just water and we're drinking a lot of water, it can actually lead to dehydration if we're just eliminating a lot of those minerals. We want to make sure we're adding electrolytes back in. We also want to manage our stress through meditation, mindfulness, self-awareness, cold or hot therapy, so really training our nervous system to be able to handle stress better. We also want to prioritize our sleep, so creating that evening routine, or just making sure you have a healthy sleep environment and staying consistent. So this is very important. Also adding in supplements. This is a great time to add in supplements to help support the recovery aspect. So focusing on anti-inflammatory or stress-reducing adaptogens is a great one, or electrolytes and protein powders, just so we can make sure that we're fueling our body properly, we're providing extra nutrients that it may need, or extra support based off just that increased intensity when it comes to training. And so recovery is the most important aspect of our hormonal health. So if we're training for an event, we want to really prioritize that recovery aspect. But also if you're someone who doesn't have a specific fitness goal that you're working towards, and you just want to be more flexible, or you just want to focus on adding in movement, you can cycle sync your exercises based off the different phases. Meaning in the follicular phase, you can focus more on cardio, so running or cardio classes, group fitness classes. In ovulation phase, you can focus on HIIT or spin class, boot camps, sculpt yoga, so increasing the intensity. In the luteal phase, focus on strength training, Pilates, and then walking and more mellow yoga as you transition closer to the menstruation phase. And then on the menstruation phase, focus on light weights, walking, active rest, or yoga. So if you don't have a specific goal that you're trying to aim for, and you just want to move your body and be more flexible, you could follow this schedule. I do want to note that the research here is very limited, but so far, this is one way that you can approach your cycle syncing with your exercise. And again, everything that I share in these modules it's just general recommendations, because we're all so different. And this is why I would love for you to start tracking your cycle so you can start to become in tune with your specific hormonal health, and we can make modifications based off you, the individual. It is important to note here is that sometimes it can take up to 3 months to see changes. So if you, for example, maybe experience estrogen dominance-like symptoms, it may take up to 3 months for you to start noticing any positive changes. So that is why it's important to stay consistent and to track so we can start to become aware of any changes and fluctuations. And a great way to track is using a period tracking app. I personally love to use my Flow app. This is a very easy to use app. You can put when you started your period. You can also keep track of the different symptoms that you experience throughout the month. And so it's a great way to be able to look back on the past 3 months or past 6 months to see any common trends that for you in your cycle. But if you don't want to use a period tracking app, you can also use pen and paper. So I provide a PDF that you can download that you can put in your bathroom and keep track of your cycle this way. So this is a great option if you don't want to use a period tracking app. And you would use it the same as any period tracking app. So you would be able to mark down the different symptoms that you experience, when you started your cycle, how heavy it was, how long it was. So this is a great alternative. And so overall, the month focus is really getting you to start tracking your cycle if you're not doing that already. So you can start to become in tune with your specific phases and your hormonal health. By you tracking, you may notice that, hey, maybe you do have some hormonal imbalances that we can work on while you're in this program. So that's going to be the main focus of just this month and overall the next few months. It's just tracking your cycle and using whatever works best for you, either your tracking app or downloading that PDF, whatever works best. And then the journal prompt for this month is, what things changed for you during your cycle? And here are my references if you'd love to dive deeper.